Good morning. It's Lisa with Lisa Heal Yourself, and today I want to talk about grief, how we end this black hole of grief. I teach people how to overcome chronic illness of any kind, whether it's emotional, mental, physical, pain, chronic illness, chronic symptoms, and really take their health into their own hands so they can become their own healer. So if this is something that you're interested in, please hit subscribe below. All right, let's get into it. So for those of you who have struggled with grief, you know how debilitating this can be. It literally turns our world and ourselves upside down when we lose something. Grief is about loss, okay? And it usually comes in a few different forms. It's usually because of death, a physical loss of a person that we love. It can also come in the form of a loss of a relationship that was very important to us and that we were attached to. Thirdly, it can come in the form of a loss of your dreams and your goals, meaning a dream has ended. The dream of the life that you envisioned is no longer possible for whatever reason, and we need to let that dream, let that image, let that visual, let that yearning and that want that we had go and open up to something new. So that can also be a grief. And then the last, and probably the longest felt of grief out of all of them, is when you have a loss of yourself, the loss of your own soul, your own identity, your own worldview. Something has changed, usually in the form of trauma within your own self. And this deep traumatic experience has changed your worldview, has changed your fundamental worldview and identity. And you seem to have lost the very perception of your own worldview that you live in. So again, you can lose your identity, you can lose your dreams, your goals, your entire worldview, a relationship, or an actual person who was close to you through death. And this is where grief comes from. So a lot of times, we can have this deep and profound sadness if we lose someone, and everybody can understand that because you've physically lost somebody who's different than you, right? When we're talking about a worldview or an identity or a dream that you wanted for your life that can no longer come true, or you no longer feel like you can live in the same world anymore with your own worldview, this can be a very lonely place because people don't see this, they can't understand it, and they don't really see where the grief is coming from. Yet you feel it all the same, right? Something has shifted, something doesn't feel right. You feel a loss inside, a deep loss inside of something intangible, right? But that was very real to you, that's now gone, lost, that can never be, that doesn't make sense anymore, that doesn't fit into this new worldview. And this can be just as profound, and in some cases an even deeper of a loss. But no matter what and how you're grieving, no matter what the cause of the grief is, we all feel this same deep, deep grief when it comes to loss. When we grieve the death of a loved one, if it's somebody like a spouse or a parent, a child, a brother or sister, a very, very close relationship that was fundamental to who you are. When this person dies, you not only grieve them as a person, you grieve the relationship that you've now lost with them, which is no longer in your life. So you're grieving them as a person and somebody that you loved. You're grieving the relationship loss in your life. You're also grieving the change of everybody else who's close around you. Often when one person dies, other people change, right? If a sibling dies, often the parents change. If one parent dies, the other parent changes, right? So these types of changes in the people around you, in the close bonds with people around you, can also be a secondary loss that you have to face when you're grieving the death of somebody close to you. So grief comes in layers, right? There's not just the loss of that one person, but it's the loss of the effects of all of it on your world, right? It's also maybe a loss of your dreams. Now that that person isn't here, maybe this person was supposed to be in your life, and your life and your future goals and dreams had this person in it. And now when you look forward, your own dreams of doing those same things without that person seem wrong. They seem off. Now you're also grieving the loss of your own dreams, right? And your own goals, because do they make sense anymore without that person in it? Do you still get the same joy, the same pleasure out of the vision that you had for your life? So grief is very complicated, and it comes in layers. And again, even if you haven't lost somebody, you may have had a trauma that changes your identity, that changes the dreams for your future, that you now can no longer see the people in your life the same way anymore. The dreams that you had for your future are all now changed. When you have a loss, a deep and profound loss of any kind, it is so important, firstly, to sit with it. Grief comes in waves, and we must be willing to sit through the violent waves, the violent tidal waves that will come and knock you over. It is not only necessary, but imperative that we let these waves wash us clean. We must cry. We must feel. We must cry every time the wave of grief hits us. We must let these tears wash us clean. This is the purpose of the tears, right? Grief cannot come up all at once because it's layered. We must take time to process that loss is real, that we can no longer bring that person back. We cannot call that relationship back. We can't go backwards. We can't undo the trauma. We can't undo the incident. We can't undo whatever's been done. The only place that we can sit is here and now and move forward. And so ending grief is kind of a 3-step process. I like to say first you feel it, and you feel it, and you continue to feel it. You allow it to come. You don't try to change it. You don't try to stop it. You don't try to fight it. You don't try to run away from it or hide from it. You must allow grief. You must allow these waves to come. You must feel your feelings. You must cry the tears for as long as it takes. These waves, at first, they come furiously, knocking you down day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute. These grief tidal waves come, and you think they will never end. They will end. They will end. Storms may come here and there throughout your life. You may get a tidal wave here and there when certain things come up and you're ready to process them. But these will get fewer and further between. You will be able to pick up the pieces. You'll be able to move forward. You'll be able to create a new identity, new dreams, new goals, and you'll be able to live this life and move forward. But first you must feel it for as long as it takes. When you are ready, and you'll know when you're ready for step 2. When you're ready, you will get a sense that you accept what has happened. You don't like it. You wish you could change it. You still don't know how you're going to live your life anymore with this new change, with this loss. But you feel suddenly like you can accept it, like it did happen, and you can't change it. And when you realize that, when you deeply, profoundly realize that there's nothing can be done to undo this, when Your memories stop going back to how can I undo this? How can I change this? How can I make this not have happened? How can I undo this? How can I get the relationship back? How can I bring the person back to life? How can I undo that terrible event or that trauma that happened to me? How can I go back? How can I go back? How can I go back? People spend their dreams, their waking hours, they spend so much time and effort looking back, thinking of what they could have done differently, how it could have been different, what they should have said, what they should have done. If only they knew now, knew them what they knew now. And this longing to go back is natural and it's normal, and it comes with the first phase of grief that you must feel this. You must feel this in its entirety and be brave enough to sit with it and know that even though the grief seems overwhelming and crushing, that it is just a feeling, it's just an emotion. And when you've cried all those tears, right, the sun will come up again, you will be okay. And then you may cry again and you'll be okay. It'll hit you again and you'll be okay. So you must be brave enough to feel it every time in its intensity that feels like it will strangle you and kill you, but it will not. And now you must pick up the pieces around you. You must look at yourself. Who am I now without this person in my life? Who am I now that my own dreams and goals have changed? That my worldview is different? That my identity has changed, that I'm different, that people around me are different. What is my life going to become? And who am I in this new world, in this new identity, in these new relationships? Who am I? And this is the self-discovery part of grief. This is where the work begins of healing, right? So this is where we take stock of who's in our life now? How do these relationships make us feel? What are the good from them? What can we hang on to? What do we want in our lives? What new relationships do we need to open our hearts to, our lives to? What experiences do we have now that still can bring us joy if we let them? And what new experiences do we need to create in our lives? Our new opportunities, new dreams, new goals, new aspirations do we need to plan for? Create new identities, look forward in different ways with different dreams. And we open up to what is, and we see the gratitude in what we still have, the beauty in what still lays around us, and how can we relate to that now? How can we experience that now? Right? And then what do we need to look forward to now? What do we need to open to? What new people or events or purpose or dreams or goals can we invite into our life? Can we be brave enough to open our hearts to again? Right? And some people will say it will never be the same again. And you're right, it will never be the same again. But that doesn't mean it can't be beautiful. That doesn't mean it can't be different and beautiful and fulfilling in different ways. Maybe it's not your first choice. Maybe it never will be your first choice. But maybe it will be just as good, just as beautiful in different ways. Maybe you can open up to new experiences that you never would have been able to if this hadn't happened. Maybe you'll be able to open up to new people, new friends, new relationships, new interests, new dreams, new goals that never would have been on the horizon. Maybe you would have been able to create a new identity for yourself, a new worldview. This takes time. This takes work. This doesn't happen overnight. Unfortunately, there's no quick fix for grief. But the steps to grief are always the same. You feel it. You allow yourself to feel it. You don't try to stop it. You don't try to fight it. You don't try to run from it. You don't try to hold it in. You feel it in its full expression. You allow it, and you're courageous enough to sit with it all of the time for however long it takes. You're kind and loving and compassionate to yourself with this deep loss. You comfort yourself. You give yourself self-love and compassion and kindness as these waves come. Step 2 is you take stock of what you have. You find the gratitude. You find the beauty in what is still left. You see what can be salvaged. You see what you can keep. You see what's still important to you, what still remains. You find that and you polish it up. You know, like somebody who lost everything in a flood or a fire, they may go back and see what remains. Salvage what remains, polish it up, hold it close, find the beauty in it, be grateful for what's still there, any little pieces. And then you must be brave to chart your new course, to open your heart again, to create new dreams, new experiences, to create new relationships, to open your heart to new people, to new love, to what can be new. And when you remember that you can, when you accept it in a way that means it's not that you like it, it's not that you want it, it's not that it's ideal, but it is what it is. And when we accept and realize and stop plaguing ourselves with the constant question of what if I could go back and change it, when we let that go, when we let the guilt of that go, when we let it go and we let ourselves off the hook, no, we can't go back and change it. The what ifs don't matter anymore. All of those memories that we're holding on to, all of those questions about undoing it and if onlys, once we let them go, then we can fully accept the reality of the situation, and that's when we start to take action to build anew. And that again takes its own type of courage. We're opening ourselves up to more loss, to more grief in the future. But it can be beautiful. It can be exciting. It can be maybe even, and I know you won't believe this now, better than it ever was. You know? And if you have not watched my video on, this is about healing. Healing is about dishonoring the wound. If you're afraid to heal because you somehow feel that you will be dishonoring your wound, I'm going to link that here. Please go watch that video. It's a really important, and it certainly applies here. A lot of people think that they cannot move forward from grief because it dishonors the person, the relationship, the event that happened, the trauma, the wound, whatever it is, it dishonors the dreams and the love and the goals and it dishonors the memory, right? So if you're afraid that moving forward will dishonor your memory, then please watch that video. Healing never dishonors. Healing is a brave act that honors. It honors the past, it honors the memory, and it moves forward. And healing is okay. You are allowed to heal from grief. You're allowed to move past it. It will not dishonor. So for those of you who are suffering with grief, no, I am not going to tell you to just let it go. I know it can be infuriating when people say you have to move past, you have to move on, you have to just let it go. I understand there is no just. You can't just let it go. It's an infuriating statement when people say that because the loss is so profound that it shakes us to the core as a human being. And there's no just letting that go. And often we don't want to let it go. We don't want to let our dreams go, our memories go. We don't want to move on in a new way. We just don't want to, right? So it becomes a matter of letting go slowly in our own time, coming to grips with what is real, what has happened and distancing ourselves over time through layers of understanding and self-love and self-kindness and self-compassion, creating new identities and new moments of peace and happiness, that we get away from the grips of the grief that is all encompassing. And that's truly the goal, is not to overcome grief, because even if we can overcome this loss that is so deep, we're likely to have another loss in our life that is as deep. And so no, we will never be able to get away from grief and grieving as a human being in this lifetime. But every grief, every profound loss is an opportunity that we don't realize yet to love ourselves, to have compassion for ourselves, to become aware enough, to become self-aware enough to be able to still be grateful for what we have, to love the wounded parts of ourselves, to let them talk, to listen to them, to be there for them, to comfort them. It's really to become our own. Grief, requires us, deep grief, to become our own parent, our own best friend, our own lover, our own healer, our own, shall I say, dare I say, God, right? Grief requires us to be something for ourselves that we have not been able to be up to this point, right? We have been attached to others to fulfill these needs for us. And so grief is really about self-love, self-compassion, and peeling and working through the layers of loss in a way that at the end of it, that we're more connected to self-love, to peace, to beauty, to abundance. And instead of closing down from grief, we want to get to the spot where grief cracks us open, where grief cracks us open to new love, to new opportunities, to new dreams, to a new life, really, and to a new you. So this is about losing yourself and finding yourself. This is about learning to love yourself, and it's about learning over time to create a new version, a new, maybe better, maybe worse, but a new, more compassionate and more in tune with what you want and what you need and what you desire, and more wise, filled with wisdom. It gives us more courage, more strength, more fortitude. It teaches us resilience and qualities that we don't want necessarily. We just want it to go back to the way it was, to when it was easy and pure and simple and everything made sense and life was amazing and our worldview was intact. But when we fall into places of deep grief, we have opportunities to learn these skills of courage and resilience and gratefulness and humility, and we learn compassion, and we learn things that we might otherwise not have learned, and it evolves us as a human being and maybe into your best self. And that's the sadness and the beauty of it all rolled into one, right? That with great loss sometimes comes the greatest opportunities and the greatest dreams and the greatest, moments could be ahead of you. And sometimes when we're grieving, we don't want to see that. We don't want to know that. And if we could just let it go, we would. We would just let it go. But we can't. Healing is a process. It's a process of understanding, of self-compassion and self-love. It's about knowing that you have courage and resilience and strength inside you that you never thought you had. It's about opening instead of shutting down, finding the cracks of light that still get in and letting them burst open over time. And our job is to sit with patience and love and kindness and compassion for ourselves. And over time, you will evolve, you will shed, you will be ready to let go. One layer at a time. And when you shed or you're able to let go of certain layers, you will make room. You will see new cracks of light. Grief is meant to forge us, teach us resilience and courage, and show us who we are. And when we can love ourselves, when we can be there for ourselves in these of our darkest moments. And so if you are grieving, I wish this for you. I say a silent prayer for you to finally and ultimately open rather than close to the life ahead, to your life ahead. And I know that this is possible, even if you don't feel it now. And so while I'm not going to tell you to just let it go, I am going to tell you that you are beautiful, you are loved, you are needed, and you will learn who you truly are from this. And you can become a better version of yourself, believe it or not. So don't give up. Don't believe that it will never end. And be patient. Be kind with yourself. And I promise you, there is more love. There is more joy and happiness ahead. There is a beauty and a life filled with beauty and second chances and springs and summers. There is beauty ahead. And you can do it. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.